It was a bright afternoon outside a busy movie theater. The sun was shining clearly in the sky, and the day felt warm and alive. People were coming out of the theater smiling, talking about the movie they had just watched. Some were holding popcorn buckets, others were checking their phones, and a few were waiting for friends near the entrance. Everything looked peaceful, like any other normal day. Cars passed slowly on the road. Street sounds mixed with laughter and casual conversation. Parents walked with their children. Teenagers stood in small groups, joking and teasing each other. No one was rushing. No one was worried. It felt like a safe place where nothing bad could happen. But sometimes the most unexpected moments happen on the most normal days. Near the side of the theater, two teenage boys stood facing each other. At first, no one noticed them. They looked like any other teens, young, restless, full of energy. But something was different. Their voices were louder than the rest of the crowd. Their words were sharp. Their faces were tense. One boy took a step forward. His jaw was tight, and his hands were shaking slightly. He tried to look strong, but his eyes told a different story. The other boy stepped back, then stopped. His chest moved up and down quickly as he breathed. His face showed anger, but also fear, like he was trying not to lose control. People nearby slowly began to notice. Conversations stopped. Smiles faded. A few people turned their heads. Someone whispered, "What's going on?" Another person pulled out a phone, ready to record. The air felt heavier now, as if the bright afternoon had suddenly changed. The boys were not strangers. They knew each other. Something small had turned into something big. A few words had become too many. Hurt feelings had turned into loud voices. Neither of them wanted to back down. Not because they were bad kids, but because they didn't know how. One of the boys felt embarrassed. The other felt misunderstood. Both felt angry. Both felt alone. The space between them felt tight, like it was shrinking. People stood still, unsure what to do. Some hoped someone would step in. Others just watched, waiting to see what would happen next. No one noticed the quiet man standing a few steps away. He wasn't looking for attention. He wasn't part of the crowd. He stood calmly, watching the moment carefully. His face was relaxed, but his eyes were full of understanding. He had seen moments like this before. Not just fights, but pain hiding behind anger. The afternoon sun reflected softly off the theater windows as the tension grew. And just when it felt like the moment might break, the quiet man took a step forward. The two boys stood only a few steps apart now. Their voices were louder than before, cutting through the calm afternoon air. People nearby could hear every word. Some shook their heads. Some looked worried. Others stayed silent, unsure if they should step in or stay back. One boy felt his face burning. He hated that people were watching. He hated that his hands were shaking. He wanted to walk away, but pride held his feet in place. Walking away felt like losing, and losing felt worse than anger. The other boy felt his chest tighten. His heart was beating fast, not just from anger, but from hurt. Something had been said that touched a deep place inside him. A place he never talked about. A place filled with pressure, stress, and feeling unseen. He didn't know how to explain it, so his voice became sharp instead. Words flew back and forth. Each sentence made things worse. People formed a loose circle around them. Not too close. Not too far. Some whispered, "This isn't good." Others hoped it would end quickly. A few teenagers nearby watched with wide eyes, feeling the tension but not knowing how to help. The sun was still bright, but the moment felt heavy. The boys' faces showed more than anger now. One looked like he was about to explode. The other looked like he was about to break down. Neither of them wanted to be there, but neither knew how to stop. Inside, both were thinking the same thing. Why does no one understand me? Their shoulders were tight. Their breathing was fast. Their bodies were ready for something they didn't truly want. They weren't thinking about consequences. They weren't thinking about tomorrow. They were trapped in the moment. A woman nearby quietly said, "Someone should calm them down." A man shook his head and replied, "They won't listen." The crowd waited. That's when the quiet man moved closer. He didn't rush. He didn't push through people. He simply walked forward with slow, steady steps. His calm felt strange in the middle of all that noise. He stood close enough to hear their voices clearly now. The boys noticed him. At first, they thought he was just another stranger. But something about him felt different. He wasn't angry. He wasn't afraid. He wasn't judging them. He looked at them the way someone looks when they truly want to understand. The arguing slowed. The quiet man spoke gently, not loud enough for the crowd, only loud enough for them. "Hey," he said calmly. "Take a breath." The words were simple, but the tone was real. One boy blinked, surprised. The other swallowed hard. No one had spoken to them like that all day. No orders. No threats. Just calm. The noise around them faded a little. The quiet man stepped between them, not to block them, but to bring space back into the moment. He stood there, relaxed, like he wasn't afraid of what he saw. The afternoon sun shone on their faces. And for the first time since the argument started, both boys paused. Something was about to change. For a few seconds, no one spoke. The two boys stood quietly, breathing heavy, their anger still there but no longer growing. The calm voice had interrupted something dangerous, not with force but with care. The space between them felt wider now, like the moment had been paused. The quiet man looked at both of them carefully. His eyes were kind, not strict. He wasn't there to blame anyone. He wasn't there to choose sides. He was there to understand. One of the boys looked away first. His eyes dropped to the ground. His chest still felt tight, but his anger was slipping into something else. Embarrassment. Sadness. Confusion. He hadn't planned for any of this. He hadn't planned to be watched by strangers. He hadn't planned to feel this exposed. The other boy swallowed hard. His hands were still tense, but his shoulders began to lower. The loud words he had shouted moments ago now felt empty. Inside his head, everything was spinning. He felt tired. Tired of explaining himself. Tired of being misunderstood. Tired of pretending he was okay. The quiet man noticed all of it. He spoke again, softly, slowly, like each word mattered. "You don't have to carry this alone," he said. The boy closest to him felt something crack inside his chest. Those words hit deeper than any insult ever could. No one had said that to him before. Not like this. Not with honesty. His eyes filled with tears. He tried to blink them away, but they came anyway. His breathing changed. It became shaky, uneven. He felt embarrassed, but he couldn't stop it. The anger he had been holding on to for so long suddenly felt too heavy to carry. The quiet man stepped a little closer. The crowd watched in silence. No one moved. No one spoke. Even the phones lowered slightly, as if people felt they were witnessing something private. Then, without warning, the quiet man opened his arms. He didn't rush. He didn't grab. He simply offered. For a moment, the boy didn't move. His mind raced. He didn't know what to do. He had never hugged a stranger before. Especially not in front of everyone. Especially not during a moment like this. But something about the calm felt safe. Slowly, the boy stepped forward. The hug was gentle. Not tight. Not forced. Just warm and steady. And that was when the boy broke down. His shoulders shook. Tears fell freely now, right there in the middle of the bright afternoon. He buried his face against the quiet man's chest, crying like someone who had been holding everything inside for far too long. The anger was gone. All that was left was pain and relief. The second boy watched this happen. His heart felt heavy. His eyes burned. He realized something in that moment. They weren't enemies. They were both hurting. They were both lost in different ways. The quiet man looked at him and gently reached out. Without saying a word, he invited him closer too. And the boy stepped in. Now all three stood together, quietly holding each other, while the world around them seemed to stop. The sun still shined. The street still existed. But the moment belonged only to them. At first, the people around them didn't know how to react. They had expected shouting. They had expected pushing. They had expected the moment to end badly. Instead, they were watching three people standing quietly in a hug. The crowd slowly fell silent. A woman covered her mouth in surprise. A man lowered his phone and slipped it back into his pocket. Teenagers who had been watching with excitement now stood still, confused by the sudden calm. The noise of the street felt far away, like it had been turned down. The boys were still crying softly. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just honest tears. Tears that came from feeling seen for the first time in a long while. The man holding them stayed calm and steady. He didn't rush the moment. He didn't pull away too soon. He let the silence do its work. Someone in the crowd whispered, "Wait, is that him?" Another person leaned closer and squinted. "No way, that looks like..." The realization spread slowly, like a quiet wave. It was Keanu Reeves. But strangely, that didn't matter in that moment. Not to the boys. Not to the feeling in the air. Keanu didn't act like a famous person. He didn't look around to see who was watching. He didn't smile for attention. He stayed focused on the two teens, like they were the only people there. One of the boys slowly pulled back and wiped his face with his sleeve. His breathing was calmer now. His eyes were red but lighter. The other boy took a deep breath, like he had finally released something heavy from his chest. Keanu looked at them gently. "You're both okay," he said quietly. "This moment doesn't define you." The words were simple, but they stayed. The boys nodded. Not because they were told to, but because they felt it was true. The crowd felt something change inside them too. People who had come out for entertainment were now standing in the middle of something real. Something human. Something rare. No one clapped. No one cheered. It didn't feel right to break the moment. Keanu slowly stepped back, giving the boys their space again. He looked at them one last time, his expression calm and trusting, like he believed they would make the right choice now. And they did. The boys looked at each other. No anger. No pride. Just understanding. One of them gave a small nod. The other nodded back. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was a beginning. Keanu turned and quietly walked away, blending back into the afternoon crowd. No drama. No spotlight. Just another person leaving the scene. But behind him, something important had already changed. The crowd slowly began to move again. People who had stopped to watch quietly returned to their own lives. Some walked away shaking their heads in disbelief. Others looked thoughtful, like they had just learned something important without anyone teaching them. The noise of the street slowly came back, but it felt softer than before. The two boys were left standing near the theater entrance. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The first boy took a deep breath and wiped his face again. His chest felt lighter, like a heavy weight had been lifted. He didn't feel angry anymore. He felt tired, but in a good way, like after crying for a long time and finally feeling calm. The second boy looked at his hands, then up at the sky. The bright afternoon sun felt warm on his face. He hadn't noticed it before. His thoughts were slower now. Clearer. The words he had shouted earlier felt far away, like they belonged to a different version of him. They looked at each other. Not as enemies. Not as rivals. Just as two teenagers who had both been hurting. "I didn't mean to say those things," one of them said quietly. The other nodded. "Yeah, me neither. It wasn't a big apology. It wasn't perfect. But it was real." They stood there for another moment, unsure what to do next. Normally, this would have been the awkward part. The moment where anger returns or pride takes over again. But something was different now. That hug had changed the space between them. They both realized something important. They didn't actually want to fight. They just wanted to be heard. They wanted someone to notice that they were struggling. And someone had. One of the boys let out a small laugh, almost surprised by himself. "That was unexpected," he said. The other smiled slightly. "Yeah, I didn't see that coming." They didn't talk about the man who stepped in. They didn't need to. The feeling he left behind was enough. Nearby, a woman who had watched the whole thing whispered to her friend, "I've never seen anything like that before." Her friend replied, "Me neither. I thought it would end badly." "But it didn't," the woman said. "It ended better." The boys picked up their things and started to walk in opposite directions. Then one of them stopped and turned back. "Hey," he said. "Take care, okay?" The other nodded. "You too." And that was it. No drama. No shouting. No regret. Just two teenagers walking away from a moment that could have gone very wrong, but didn't. The afternoon continued. Movies played. Cars passed. People laughed again. To most of the world, it was just another day. But for those two boys, it was a turning point. They would remember it for a long time. Not because of fear. Not because of shame. But because someone chose kindness when anger was easier. And sometimes, that's all it takes to change a story. Later that afternoon, the space outside the movie theater looked normal again. People walked in and out. Friends laughed. Children tugged at their parents' hands. Nothing showed that something powerful had just happened there. But the moment was still alive in the hearts of those who saw it. A few people stood nearby, quietly talking about what they had witnessed. Not with excitement, but with wonder. One man said, "I've seen arguments end badly so many times." Another replied, "I never thought something so simple could stop it." They were talking about a hug. Not a speech. Not a warning. Not anger. Just a hug. The two boys were already gone, walking in different directions, carrying something new inside them. They didn't suddenly have perfect lives. Their problems didn't disappear. But something had changed. They had learned that anger didn't have to control them. that being heard mattered more than being right. And the man who made that happen, he didn't stay to explain himself. He didn't wait for praise. He didn't tell anyone what he did. That was just who Keanu Reeves was. To him, it wasn't about stopping a fight. It was about seeing two young people in pain and choosing kindness instead of fear. He didn't see troublemakers. He saw humans who needed a moment of care. That's why the moment mattered so much. Because anyone could have walked away. Anyone could have ignored it. Anyone could have said, "It's not my problem." But he didn't. And that choice changed everything. Somewhere down the road, those two boys might face anger again. Life would test them. People would misunderstand them. Moments would feel heavy. But deep inside, they would remember that afternoon. The bright sun. The quiet pause. The feeling of being understood without judgment. They would remember that strength doesn't always look loud. Sometimes strength looks calm. Sometimes strength looks gentle. Sometimes strength looks like opening your arms instead of raising your voice. That afternoon showed everyone watching that kindness is not weak. It is powerful. It can stop what anger cannot. It can heal what words cannot. And the most important lesson of all, you don't have to be famous to do what he did. You don't need money. You don't need power. You don't need attention. All you need is the courage to care. Because sometimes the smallest act can change the entire direction of a moment. And sometimes, a single hug is enough. As the sun slowly moved across the sky, the day continued like nothing unusual had happened. People went back to their plans. Cars kept moving. The movie theater doors opened and closed again and again. To the world, it was just another afternoon. But for some people, that moment stayed. A young girl who had watched from a distance asked her mother, "Why were those boys crying?" Her mother paused and said softly, "Because someone cared." That answer stayed in the air. Kindness is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't ask to be remembered. But it leaves marks that time cannot erase. The two boys went home that day with something they didn't expect. Not shame. Not fear. But understanding. They learned that anger is often just pain asking for help. They learned that being strong doesn't mean hurting others. Sometimes it means letting yourself be seen. Years later, they might forget the exact words that were said. They might forget the faces in the crowd. But they would never forget how that moment felt. The calm. The safety. The release. And the man who stepped in that day, he didn't change their lives with fame or power. He changed them with presence. By slowing down. By listening. By choosing love when anger was easier. That man was Keanu Reeves. But in that moment, he wasn't an actor. He wasn't a star. He was just a human being helping other human beings. That's why the story matters. Because it reminds us of something simple and true. You never know what someone else is carrying inside. You never know how close a moment is to breaking. And you never know how powerful one small act can be. A kind word. A calm voice. A hug. These things don't make headlines every day. But they save moments. And sometimes they save people. So the next time you see anger, remember this story. The next time you feel like walking away, pause. The next time someone is hurting, choose kindness. Because strength isn't always loud. Sometimes, strength looks like compassion. And sometimes, one hug can stop a fight, heal a heart, and change a story forever.